part of the beauty of love is we don't even know how to explain it. We don't even know how to verbalize it. It's just like the greatest drug that's ever existed.
Hey everyone, on this week's episode, our last of the season, we'll be back with season 12 in September. I'm joined by the writer James Frey. Many of you will know or recognize James as the author of the 2003 book A Million Little Pieces about his drug addiction and time in rehab, which was marketed as a memoir, became an Oprah Book Club pick and New York Times bestseller, and later, after he admitted to having falsified certain portions of the book, sparked a media controversy. One that, around 20 years later now, honestly seems pretty petty and pathetic, especially in the context of our current era of public shaming and cancel culture. Were this media storm to have happened today, and it's highly doubtful it would have, I'm not so sure many people would have really cared. The controversy, if one could even call it that now, would probably have been a whimper. And yet, it brought even more attention to the fact that A Million Little Pieces is a truly remarkable text. One that also led to the rise of the literary genre autofiction, which blends autobiography with various fictional elements. When James wrote the book, autofiction wasn't even really a thing. Today, it's a prominent mode in the publishing industry. For James, he'd rather his books just be considered art, not part of any one genre. Since that mid-aughts brouhaha, James has persevered and gone on to write many more books, including 2005's My Friend Leonard, 2009's Bright Shiny Morning, and 2018's Katerina, as well as several young adult novels, selling millions of copies along the way, and he's now out with his latest, Next to Heaven, a raunchy, hilarious, and absurd yet not satire about the 1% of the 1% living in the fictional town of New Bethlehem, Connecticut. Centered around a swingers party and a murder, Next to Heaven is a pulpy page-turner that captures the sense that, as James puts it on this episode, we have witnessed over the past 10 years the greatest accumulation of wealth by the smallest number of people in the history of civilization. And also that there is a humanity beneath the veneer of beauty and wealth and perfection. There is love and hate and secrets and violence and rage and terror and revenge. On the episode, during which James sat Lotus for the entire duration, we talk about his long-term study of Taoism and how he tries to live according to the ways of the Tao as much as he can. His writing is a portal to being as vulnerable, open, and bold as possible, and why love, for him, is the greatest drug ever. Before we get into the episode, I'd first like to thank our Season 11 presenting sponsor, the high jewelry Maison Van Cleef & Arpels, which this year is collaborating with the American Museum of Natural History in New York to present the exhibition Cosmic Splendor, jewelry from the collections of Van Cleef & Arpels, an awe-inspiring assemblage of jewelry creations, timepieces, and precious objects with astronomical references from the Maison's patrimonial collection, as well as from private loans. From dramatic necklaces depicting rockets in flight, to gem-encrusted pendants inspired by distant nebulae, to watches with intricate mechanisms that trace the transit of planetary bodies, Cosmic Splendor features nearly 70 astrological, celestial, and mythological creations that celebrate the wonders and mysteries of the cosmos. Among the enchanting universe of pieces on display are a diamond-studded yellow, gold, and platinum meteor clip from 1951, a yellow, gold, and ruby moon pendant from 1969 that's a celebration of the Apollo 11 moon landing, and a gold, sapphire, and diamond Diana clip depicting the goddess of the moon from 2011. These works trace the stylistic evolution and the level of expertise that this high jewelry maison, founded in Paris's Place Vendôme in 1906, has developed throughout its history. You can purchase admission tickets or learn more about Cosmic Splendor at amnh.org/exhibitions. That's amnh.org/exhibitions. And now, here's my conversation with James. Hi, James. Welcome to Time Sensitive.
Hi, Spencer. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I wanted to start this interview with Tao Te Ching. The credits page of your first book, which we'll of course talk about, A Million Little Pieces, notes the author is particularly grateful to the Chinese classic Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, who is believed to have lived in the 6th century BC. I have read many translations of this ancient text, but Stephen Mitchell's, published by HarperCollins in 1988, is by far the best. I've made a few minor changes in the passages I've quoted with Stephen Mitchell's permission. Tell me about your Tao Te Ching time, I guess. Like, how has it shaped your work in your life, your time with this book?
I don't know if this is being videotaped, but
It's not.
you can see how I immediately sat down when I entered the space, right? I sit lotus. I sit with my hands in a specific position. I sit in a meditative position, in a traditional Taoist meditative position. I read the Tao in rehab 32 years ago. I got sent in there. I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in the 12 steps. I had lived a relatively tumultuous and painful life. I was 23. I was a crackhead and an alcoholic. And I was facing like some real troubles and difficulties, and I had to figure out a way to stay alive. And my brother gave me a copy of the Tao. He was like, hey man, maybe you'll be into this. And I read it, and it was the first sort of religious or philosophical document that I had ever read in my life that made any sense to me. The translation of Tao Te Ching is The Art of the Way. The book is The Art of the Way of Living. It's a very simple book that preaches very simple things. Patience, simplicity, and compassion. Patience with yourself and others. Simplicity in thought, in action, in life. And compassion for yourself and others. Even since rehab, I've had a tumultuous life. I've had all kinds of ridiculous things happen. Most of which happened because in some reason I made them happen. But they were still difficulties, and I have been meditating for decades. It keeps me sane. I meditate every day. Taoism has profoundly affected how I write. You know, again, Taoism preaches a lot of things. It actually doesn't, but one of the things it preaches is acceptance and progress. And so when I write books, I don't use outlines. I only write one draft. I believe in precision the first time. I have contractual clauses in all of my publishing contracts that publishers are not allowed to touch what I do. They are only allowed to put it through copy editing. I have to use specific copy editors who I've worked with for a long time because they
know that you don't like to use commas.
They know that I write with a specific sort of system
Right.
and rhythm
where
I don't follow traditional grammar, punctuation, page layout.
Yet it's very much yours. From book number 1 to present, it's there.
When I started out as a writer, we're sort of digressing from Taoism, but
We'll go back.
my education and my interest is in both art and literature, but I approach what I do much more from a position of an artist than I do as a writer or a person who exists in any sort of literary community. But even that being said, when I was working to become a writer, I looked at a lot of patterns in both art history and in literature. They are similar, although our art's a little bit different. In every case, the people who made the biggest impacts on the world, the cultural world, were the people who entered it with a hyper-specific voice, a hyper-specific position that was unlike anything that had ever been seen before they arrived, and altered the landscape of what they do in ways that were irrevocable. When you think about that, you have to approach that in two ways. One is the formal approach to it, which in painting would be Picasso. I'll use Picasso as an example. When Picasso and Braque formulated Cubism, it was the first sort of true abstraction of visual art or painting. That's the breakthrough. Suddenly we are working in the abstract instead of in the figurative. We have opened a new world. And when you looked at a Picasso or a Braque, you knew exactly what they were and you understood the importance of them. And although Picasso's career varied wildly for the rest of it, you could always see his hand in anything he did. In writing, it's similar, although writing and literature is vastly more conservative than art. People don't think about literature as conservative, but it's unbelievably conservative. It is essentially an artistic medium that hasn't changed in 500 years. There's fiction and nonfiction and poetry, like there's always been. And there's words on a page, and there's a set of rules you're supposed to follow if you want to publish a book within one of these pre-approved segments of literature. Literature's scared of change. Literature's scared of controversy. Whereas, again, fine art does the opposite. Often the more controversial the work in fine art, the more important it is and the more impact it is and the more sort of historical relevance it has.
Catalan's banana.
A great example. I mean, there's a million examples, but yes, that's an example. Radicality is embraced. Mm-hmm. Radicality in literature is very much not embraced. Mm-hmm. There's a whole system of schooling for both art and literature. And in literature, they teach you to be very conservative. Follow this set of rules, write within these parameters, write things that fit squarely within our three pre-approved genres of fiction, nonfiction, or poetry.
You experienced this all too well.
The point is, as I started writing, the point was to write in a way that was absolutely singular, unlike anything that had ever come before it, absolutely identifiable if you read a quarter of a page of anything I've ever written. And it blew apart all of the things I'm talking about. It blew apart the idea of being able to put it in any specific genre. It blew apart systems of grammar and punctuation that have existed for hundreds of years. It gave the finger to everything. I'm still doing it.
I want to bring this back to Tao Te Ching. As you mentioned, you're not religious. You don't believe in God. But if you had to pick a faith, would it be that book? Would that book be...
The Tao, yeah. The difference between sort of Taoism and other types of things, and Taoists themselves debate whether it's a religion or not, is that we engage in a solitary practice. Taoism is something you do alone, as opposed to a religion, which is very much communal and community-based. But yeah, I'm a Taoist. I try to live according to the ways of the Tao as much as I can.
There were a couple references from A Million Little Pieces that I wanted to quote here that I loved. One is, be content with what you have and take joy in the way things are. When you realize you have all you need, the world belongs to you.
Yeah.
This one's obvious to me, but the slow will beat the fast.
Yeah. Yeah. The turtle in the hare was not an original idea. Yeah, it's like I was saying before, slow, gradual, measurable progress. Another famous quote from the Tao that people don't know is from the Tao is, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. If you just keep taking steps forward every day, you'll get to wherever you want to go. And I've approached things my whole life like that as well, or at least as an artist, a relentless pursuit at a pace that is whatever it is. But pace isn't important.
All right, let's go to your new book.
All right.
Next to Heaven.
Yeah.
This is a book about a wealthy small town in Connecticut, one of the wealthiest towns in the country, a town that was founded, and this is the fictionalized part, by a man who, quote, wanted the town to be next to heaven, the most beautiful place in existence.
That's not fictional. That's actually real.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mudge is real?
You can Google Amos Mudge and you will discover that he founded the town of
New Bethlehem, which is fictional.
New Canaan, Connecticut in real life, and New Bethlehem, Connecticut in the world that I have created.
Yes. And this is a town, quote, where you moved if you were rich but never wanted to discuss money. A town with, quote, movie stars, rock stars, athletes, the host of all three major network news shows, famous comedians and famous artists, a notorious writer.
Yeah, there's a notorious writer who lives in New Canaan.
A beloved writer, too many CEOs to count. I mean, the notorious writer obviously sounds familiar. I would say also it's a book about the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah, it's a book about the wealthiest people in the world and how they live and what there are these bubbles of insane wealth that exist around the country in various places, certainly in Connecticut, Silicon Valley and San Francisco, the west side of LA, Palm Beach, Florida, certain parts of Dallas, Houston, Texas. There are these bubbles of extreme wealth, and they are different than the rest of the world. And living with people who have extreme wealth is a different experience. And it wasn't anything I had ever seen accurately portrayed in like literature or at least in contemporary literature. There's certainly been things about it. White Lotus is an easy example about very, very wealthy people, but it's also very wealthy people on vacation.
Yeah.
Right? Where do those wealthy people live? What is their day-to-day life like? How is it different? I've always said that whenever I write a book, all I'm doing is holding a mirror up to the world, and I show you. This is very much that.
And this world, I would say, that you've gained access to. You're writing about the art world, which you've learned a lot about. There's this Gagosian gallery in the book. The book starts with an art opening where there are, quote, bankers, hedge fund managers, private equity partners, their wives and girlfriends, the art advisors who help build them their collections and make them feel important. Other artists, friends and family of the artists, all mingling. It's a whodunit. This is a murder mystery book.
Yeah, it's a murder mystery set in the richest town in America, right? I live in New Canaan, Connecticut, which is, no shock to say, is the basis for the town I write about in my book, New Bethlehem, Connecticut.
Yeah, there is a glass house.
There is a glass house. The greatest collection of mid-century modern architecture in the world is in a small town in Connecticut. It's a cool place to live, but I wanted to hold up a mirror and have a few laughs. The best way to do it was sort of a murder mystery. It's not like a dreadfully serious book. Also, when I write, I want people to have a good time. I came about this book because during the pandemic, somebody asked me to read Jackie Collins' Hollywood Wives and think about adapting it into a television show. And I read it, and we didn't agree on how to adapt it, but I loved it. I thought it was great. I read a couple other Jackie Collins books. I read a couple Danielle Steele books. People don't give those books the credit they deserve. They're great. They're fun. They're dirty. They're easy and entertaining as hell. And so I was like, you know what? I live in this world I'm reading about. Why not write about it? And I've had entree into this world in a few different ways. One is I lived in Soho and New Canaan, Connecticut for the last 25 years. Both are filled with rich people. When I moved to New York, I did become very involved in the art world. All of my closest friends in my life are somehow involved in art, whether they're art dealers or artists or art collectors. And sort of when you entered that world, when I did, which was around 2000, around the turn of the century, I met a lot of cool young people, artists and collectors. Over the years, those artists have gone on to become the most famous artists in the world, and those collectors have gone on to become many of the wealthiest people in the world and the biggest art collectors in the world. So I've always been sort of part of that as this observer, not an artist, not an art dealer, not a billionaire, but somebody who moves very fluidly and fluently among all of them. So the entree to the book was that, art.
Yeah, and it really sets a stage that's also really believable. I mean, I do feel like this book is tailor-made for an HBO show, a Netflix show. I mean, it reads like that, and not in a pandery way like, oh, James is trying to make a TV show. It's an entertaining book, like in the Danielle Steele vein that you were talking about. But also, It's interesting. I mean, you mentioned White Lotus. I feel like there's a bit of Billions in there too. Like, obviously, that's the Fairfield County, Connecticut connection. And there's this new show on Apple TV Plus, Your Friends and Neighbors.
Yeah, my buddy Jonathan Tropper makes that show.
Yeah, with John Hamm and Amanda Peet.
Yep.
And I won't spoil anything in the book, but there is a character not a character overlap, but character behavior overlap that happens on that show and in your book. And I was like, man, there's something happening in the zeitgeist here. There
is something happening in the zeitgeist, which is we have witnessed over the past 10 years the greatest accumulation of wealth by the smallest number of people in the history of civilization. It has fucking changed the world. While that has been happening, we have seen the rise of social media, which contributed to that massive accumulation of wealth in huge ways, but also spreads information in ways that has never happened before. And it has created this tsunami of greed, of addiction, of no morality.
I can't help when you say tsunami, I can't help but think of White Lotus. Sorry. Tsunami.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a tsunami in Thailand. There's a tsunami of wealth overcoming the Western world right now.
Yeah.
So I think people are thinking about it because it's in our fucking faces all the time.
I mean, your epigraph for this book is Balzac, which I really appreciated that you kind of found this like historical moment to couch it. The epigraph is, behind every great fortune lies a great crime.
There is truisms in that statement. A lot of the wealthy people I know live in the gray areas. I was setting the book up with a classical French literary reference, a reference to wealth, a reference to the past 10 years and this accumulation of wealth. And it sets the book up to go where it goes. While I wrote a book that I hope is entertaining, I hope once people start reading it, they can't stop. I hope you laugh. I hope you get turned on. I hope you're disgusted. I hope you're thrilled and scared.
Your other books aren't murder mysteries, obviously, but it does achieve what those books achieve too, in the sense that you feel all the feels. This is a book that's exploring themes of desire, sex, hunger, pleasure, guilt, shame, fear, love,
hate,
power,
murder, greed.
Yeah, I mean, themes I would say that exist as a constant thread in your work, but are also just really primordial, deeply human themes. I mean, I love how the narrator in, just to go to your 2018 book, Katerina, lays it out. We are living in what is supposed to be an advanced society. Our desires are the same. The same as they have been since the first day one of us stepped out of a fucking cave. Love, fuck, eat, drink, sleep.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to hear
Those are still our desires, and all money does is make them more accessible and let you buy more expensive versions of them. That's it. Our desires are the same. We don't like to think about it, but we're fucking animals. There's this whole trend on social media right now about, could 100 guys kill a silverback gorilla, right? It's astonishing the amount of time people are devoting to debating this, but like, we're just kind of very smart gorillas.
It's the stuff Werner Herzog movies are made of.
We're smart gorillas, and our desires are the same. And what wealth gives you is the ability to make any desire you have, any desire that fucking exists, even to go into space, possible. That's what money gives you. And those are the types of people that I live with. And I'm not judging them. Rich people have really nice fucking lives. I will say I don't think they have better lives than anybody else. Your problems are just different, and you suffer in more comfort.
Velvet coffin vibes.
Yeah. I always say the golden prison, right? There's a reason there's a golden house on the front cover. It's a golden fucking prison. Yeah, I wanted to write about money in a way that connected with people and reflects what I've seen and experienced over the past few years. The rich live in a different fucking world, and it's a fun world. When I think about it, I reference Jackie Collins and Danielle Steele. They were in some way very involved in the sort of creation of it. But I also think a lot about Gatsby. And we don't think about Gatsby as like an entertaining book or a fun book. But that really is the reason why so many people have read it. It hits on classic American themes and universal literary themes, but it's also entertaining and fun to read.
Yeah, like Gadsby, your book's got a rollicking party.
Yeah, mine's a little different.
Yeah, I'll just say it's orgy-ish. Well, It is an orgy.
Yeah, I mean, we can say it. The plot of the book revolves around a murder that comes out of a swingers party at a billionaire's house, right?
Yeah, that doesn't actually give anything away. That's not a spoiler.
And that actually also happens in all of these uber wealthy conclaves. Like the uber wealthy are bored. They look at their wife and think, well, my buddy's wife's hot. And his buddy thinks, well, my buddy's wife's hot. And they all hang out and fuck. And that happens.
Hey everyone, taking a quick break here to tell you a little bit about our Season 11 presenting sponsor, the high jewelry maison Van Cleef & Arpels, which this year is collaborating with the American Museum of Natural History in New York to present the exhibition Cosmic Splendor, jewelry from the collections of Van Cleef & Arpels, an awe-inspiring assemblage of jewelry creations, timepieces, and precious objects with astronomical references. Featuring nearly 70 celestial, mythological, and astrological jewelry creations that celebrate the wonders and mysteries of the cosmos, the exhibition presents an enchanting universe of jewelry from the Maison's patrimonial collection, as well as contemporary creations, some of them on loan from private collections. You can purchase admission tickets or learn more about Cosmic Splendor at amnh.org/exhibitions. That's amnh.org/exhibitions. And now, back to the episode. This is taking it in another direction, but love is a theme that resonates in the book, but also across your work, like, James and Lily in A Million Little Pieces, and Jay and Katerina, the various love triangles in Next Death.
Yeah, again, like I write about love. When you're a writer, people always be like, what do you write about? And they ask, and they also say fiction or nonfiction. And I sort of chuckle when they ask that. But when they ask what I write about, I say I write about love and art and sex and human pain.
The thing about love, and I want to stick on this because you've written so beautifully about this in your books, and yet I think because you've been known as this bad boy of American letters, you haven't been recognized.
Thank you.
For this. And like your books really do capture love in all of its nuances, from, quote, new, fresh, thrilling, overwhelming, all-consuming love to total, utter heartbreak.
I've experienced those things in my life. I'm a romantic in my soul, right? I love love. I love being in love. I love the process of falling in love. I was married for 20 years. I loved being married most of the time. We all do, right? One of the things I try to do in my books is say the things we all think but nobody else will ever say. So in my books, I'm far more vulnerable than I am as a human being walking around in the world. But I always say to myself, like, say everything. No filters. Be bold as fuck. And in our hearts, I think all of us, certainly we all feel love. I always say love is like truth in God. We all have our own experience of it. We all have our own view of it. We all have our own deeply subjective view of all of those things. But love to me is the thing that sort of counterbalances all the rest of the bullshit in life. You can be broke. You can be addicted, your body can be fucked, and you could be facing huge, insurmountable, potentially, challenges. But if somebody loves you, none of it matters. So I write about it because it's a big part of human existence and my human existence. I've been in love a lot. Long love, short loves, passionate love, self-destructive loves. I write about emotions, really. Like I said, human pain.
There's a bit from Katerina I wanted to quote here, which you write about, quote, love that overwhelms. that justifies our existence, that provides proof we are here for a reason, that either confirms the existence of God and divinity or renders it utterly meaningless. Love that makes life more than just whatever we know and see and feel, that elevates it. Love for which so many words have been spoken and written and read and cried and screamed and sung and sobbed, but is beyond any real description of it.
Yeah, that's love, man.
That love.
I mean, I talk about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
That's an example of it. I love Jackson Pollock.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time I ever saw Jackson Pollock, I was about 8 years old. I was living in Cleveland, Ohio. I had ADD. I was a fucking rowdy, exceedingly difficult kid. My mom signed me up for art lessons at the Cleveland Museum of Art, thinking maybe that'll help him out. And I remember we were walking through the museum on a Saturday morning to get to where the class was, and I saw a Pollock, and I just stopped. And I just looked at it. And I didn't really understand it at the time, but I always was fascinated by Pollocks. And maybe when I was probably like 18, I saw Full Fathom 5 at MoMA. And I understood that the reason I liked the painting on some basic fundamental level is that it expressed emotions for which there are no words. So I could look at a Pollock painting and understand the feeling he felt, or I believe I could, or interpret it however. It made me feel in ways that there are no words for. So when I talk about love, you can't really write about it truthfully or share the true experience of it because there are no words for it. Maybe music gets the closest. Painting, they're all limited in certain ways. But like that's part of the beauty of love is we don't even know how to explain it. We don't even know how to verbalize it. It's just like the greatest drug that's ever existed. Yeah, so I love writing about it. I love being in love. I love love. And thank you.
Yeah. Time and aging, I also wanted to bring up because they're under layers to this new book. I would say time is just a central component of your work in this really, I mean, in Katerina, which goes back and forth between this 25-year increment. But even in the new book, you know, there's this moment where one of the narrators says of one of the characters, Grace Hunter, days moved slowly and years moved quickly, and she woke up one day and she was in her 40s. Time doesn't fly, it vanishes like mist in the morning, summer flowers, dreams. I loved that moment. I really felt like you were capturing something very true about time, which is that we all get caught up in our lives, and then one day something occurs or we just feel something, and all of a sudden there's this like time shift.
I mean, I thought about that because I'm getting older, man, right? Like I'm 55 years old. I've been a writer now, a professional writer for 30 years. I have children in college. I woke up and I was old and it went by real fast. And you always hear people talk about like, they say these things. Oh, you will love your children. Oh, they will grow up so fast. Oh, you'll blink and you'll be 60. And you always like, yeah. But I fucking blinked, man, and I'm 50 fucking 5. And
yeah.
You know, you start having to stare down and think about and contemplate real things as you get older. Like, what do I want to do with my remaining time? I've thought a lot about like how old have the other males in my family lived to try to guess how long I'm going to live. We were talking before this started about how I'm friends actually independent of our friendship with your wife. And you guys are entering an incredibly exciting stage of your lives where, you know, you're talking about might be time to have a baby.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be extraordinary for you. But you're going to be 60 and you're not going to know what the fuck happened. Right?
I'll come back to this episode at 60.
You can.
James was right.
I don't think so much about my life. But I think a lot about like, what do I want to do with it now? And it's interesting, a lot of the things you've brought up today, Taoism, being accepting and joyful about whatever you have, are a lot of things I think about as I get older, especially when I think about rich people, like the book. Like, I know so many rich people who have more than 15 generations of their family could ever spend, and they still work 14, 16 hours a day. They're still fucking stressed out. And I always say to all of them, what are you doing, man? Like, don't you have enough? Even if you just count your interest, it's impossible for you to spend what you got. One of the themes of the book is that money is a drug, that money is this addiction, that money
and power.
Work and power, it's all tied up. With money comes power, as we have a president who's a simple example of that. And Taoism, again, has had a huge part in how I think. I contemplate, like, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? And honestly, what I want to do is sit in the woods and meditate and read books and look at art and listen to tunes and be the best dad and the best friend and the best boyfriend, companion, lover, whatever word you want to be, I can be. I don't give a fuck about any of the rest of it. Do things that bring me joy. And that's the only lesson I think that has any value in aging, is like, design your life to bring you the most peace and joy that you can possibly do.
Marie Kondo your life.
Kinda. I've never watched Marie Kondo, but I live like Marie Kondo would walk into my house and look around and be like, you're good, bro. Right? It's incredibly simple. It's mostly empty. There's books, there's stereo, there's art. Beyond books, art and musical devices, like everything else that exists in my house has to have a function. It has to be there for a reason. So it's very spare, very simple. It's all white.
Spartan.
Yeah.
Minimalist.
It is very minimalist. It is very simple. It's hard to say it's Spartan when there are Warhols and Picassos on the wall, but it is simple.
Let's go back to your youth here, and I want to start by asking you about your reading. You've said and spoken quite a bit about the influence of authors like Henry Miller and Jack Kerouac and Bukowski, Hunter S. Thompson, Ken Kesey.
Baudelaire Rimbaud.
But I also, in preparation for this, I watched the Larry King interview you did. In it, you talk really eloquently about that your aim was really ultimately in writing a million little pieces. You wanted to belong to or be a part of this tradition, a quote, a long tradition of what American writers have done in the past. People like Hemingway and Fitzgerald and Kerouac. So back to Fitzgerald. Was that sort of your bad boy dream? I mean, growing up, I know that the thing you did consistently was read and then eventually start getting, messed up on drugs and alcohol. Those were the two things that were sort of your consistent companions, I'd say.
I always read a ton.
Yeah.
And I got in trouble. That was my childhood. I was like, my parents were always told, oh, he's a gifted boy if you can just figure out how to control him. He's a very smart boy. But I didn't want to be controlled, and I didn't let anybody control me. And I read a huge amount. I have no memory of life without reading being a part of it. And as I read, I was talking about this with somebody recently. As our culture has changed, phones and social media has very much sort of pacified the youth of the world. And it has also sort of broken down subcultures that used to exist. So there used to be punks and metalheads and hip hop crews and skaters and whatever. But they were sort of set subcultures. The one I was a part of was the fuck-ups. The people who were self-destructive and blew every opportunity they ever had and loved drugs and alcohol. That was me, and that was my friend.
Those people didn't always love reading, and you loved reading too.
They didn't always love reading. So I was this kid who loved reading and was a fuck-up. I vividly remember this. When I was 21, a friend of mine gave me a beaten-up copy of Tropic of Cancer and was like, you should give this a read, man. And I read it, and I just couldn't believe it existed. And for all of my life, I had always read books, and I was a heavy reader. Like, I was reading Tolstoy at 16, which wasn't that uncommon back then. It's exceedingly uncommon now, but I came across Henry Miller, and I'd always thought of writers as like these magical people who went to Harvard, which wasn't going to be an option for me, or who, had special gifts. I was never one of them. And then I read Henry Miller, and I was like, that motherfucker's just a shit talker. That motherfucker is just letting it fucking rip. He's letting it rip. I could do that. I could do my own version of that. And Henry Miller led me to Baudelaire and Rimbaud and Celine. I had already read Jack Kerouac and Charles Bukowski, and certainly Hemingway and Fitzgerald and all of them. When I started out, it was, the goal is to be the most notorious writer in the world. The goal,
mission accomplished.
The goal is to be not just the most notorious, but and again, when I was coming up, being a famous writer was a whole thing. Tons of people want to be famous writers.
Right.
I wanted to be the most notorious in the world. I wanted to write books that, when we talk about art, that shattered this safe, horseshit, conservative culture of literature where you are told, follow all of these rules. Your book is this, or this. You have to follow all these rules that have existed for hundreds of years. Well, fuck that.
Yeah, which the MFA culture has only exacerbated.
Oh yeah, like you go get an MFA to be taught to write like somebody else.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that. I wanted to blow the fucking world apart. When I talk about it in Katerina, I want to burn the motherfucking world down.
A book that literally starts with Tropic of Cancer. I mean, Tropic of Cancer is the impetus for this character Jay going to Paris.
And if you read the first page and a half of Katerina, they very much are a heavily referential homage to the first 2 pages of Tropic of Cancer, which to me are the most powerful thing I have ever read for myself. All my heroes were fuck-ups. Like, would I rather be Sonny Barger, the leader in the Hells Angels, or like a politician? Like the bad guy. I've always admired the rebels. I've always admired the people who are willing to lift their middle fingers and be like, come at me. This is what I got. This is what I'm doing. Come at me. And so I approached from very early becoming a writer from that perspective, like write books that cause problems. I remember I was like, Henry Miller had a book banned in every English-speaking country in the world for 35 years? Fuck yeah. Like I want to pull that off.
Well, but also, I read somewhere where you said as soon as you read the final word of Tropic of Cancer, you knew, you were like, yes, this is my journey. That final word is heart. I looked it up.
I didn't know that. I finished Tropic of Cancer, and in some way, I don't know how to describe it or understand it, but I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be my generation's Henry Miller or Baudelaire or Kerouac or Bukowski. I remember when I was thinking a lot about it, there's a couple lines from a Bob Dylan song called Up to Me that was originally supposed to be on Blood on the Tracks, but got taken off at the last minute. You can hear the tune, but there's a line from Up to Me, and Bob Dylan says, if I had thought about it, I never would have done it. I guess I would have let it slide. If I had paid attention to what others were thinking, the heart inside me would have died. I was just too stubborn to ever be governed by enforced insanity. Somebody had to reach for the rising star. I guess it was up to me. And I remember hearing those lyrics, and I was thinking all about this. Could I fucking do this? And I was like, you know what? Somebody's going to do it. Somebody's going to be my generation's fucking Henry Miller or Kerouac or Bukowski. And I was like, I guess it's up to me. Go fucking do it. You can. And I knew. I was like, I'm going to pull this off. It might take 5 years. It might take 25, but I'm going to fucking do it. And I set about going to do it immediately. It wasn't like I was a C- student and a fucking crackhead and a drug dealer. So it wasn't like I had any sort of...
Exactly. And you graduate Denison College, you go off to Paris, you find yourself in London, Chicago, eventually make your way to LA.
Yep.
And in LA, you're like hustling screenplays.
Yeah, I had this whole plan. Like,
which is sort of wild because I was like thinking about your LA time and then thinking about Fitzgerald, not knowing that he'd come up earlier in this conversation. And Fitzgerald had a hell of a time in LA.
He died
famously.
Penniless in a puddle of his own piss writing movies for assholes, right? I'm not going out that way. But again, I sort of took things I knew from the art world when I was approaching being a writer. Artists will do a lot of things to make a living before they can make a living as an artist, but they all generally have to do something with art. They're art handlers, or they work at a gallery, or they work for another artist, but they are in some way engaged with what they do. I moved to Los Angeles in 1994. Movie business was booming. Screenplay business was booming. And I was just like, you know what, man, I had been working for the mob and I had been working in bars. And I was like, you know what, I've had enough of this. And I was penniless. I wasn't penniless working for the mob, but then I quit. And so then I worked in bars and then I was penniless. But I was like, fuck it, figure out some way to make money writing. And you can keep trying to learn how to write books. Teach yourself how to write books. So I wrote a dumb movie. I wrote a romantic comedy.
David Schwimmer.
It got made. It was ridiculous and commercial enough that I moved to LA. I hustled it. I sold it. It got made with David Schwimmer. Doug Ellen, who went on to create Entourage, directed it.
It's called Kissing a Fool, if you
Fool.
all want to watch it.
It's about a novelist. So I was even writing about what I wanted to be then. But yeah, and then I suddenly had a career as a screenwriter at a pretty young age. So I just wrote movies and made money and supported myself while I kept teaching myself how to write books, and I kept reading and I kept looking at art. I have a lot of fond memories of that time in my life when I was teaching myself how to write.
Yeah. So from there, you go on to write A Million Little Pieces in the spring of '97, or I guess
I wrote it in
that's when it starts. But then you take this big pause. There's this pregnant pause in the middle, and
you do a lot of good research.
Yeah, thanks. I try. But you ditch screenwriting and you start up the book again in the fall of 2000. Your friends and family and everyone's like, "This is insane. What are you doing?" But okay, fine. And you write this book. Tell me about the time of writing that, that in-between moment of okay, you've basically become a reasonably successful screenwriter and you could definitely go down that path. Instead, you're like, nah, I have my Bukowski moment. I'm going to go write my book.
So I was 29. I had a couple movies made. I'd written a couple. I'd produced a couple. I had directed a movie. I had a really nice career. And yeah, I was like, yeah, this is cool. And you have done what you achieved, which was I had bought a house. I had a career. I had a little bit of dough in the bank. But I was like, this isn't what you came to do. You came to write the fucking book. The first stage of that was in 1997, I wrote the first 55 pages of A Million Little Pieces in basically one long sitting. I don't remember how long it was. It was probably 12 or 14 hours long. And I remember when I wrote it, it just came. It just showed up. And I didn't question it. Taoism, I didn't question it. I was just sitting by a river, watching it go by. And I read those 55 pages and I was like, fuck, this is it. You got it. This is fucking it. So I started again thinking about, okay, how can you do this from here? And I needed a little more money to be able to take about 2 years off. So I wrote a couple other movies, made some money, and then took a second mortgage out on my house. And I had enough money for about 18 months. And I sat down and I was like, fucking go. And I remember saying to myself, when I write a book, I always have a wall where I put things. And I confront myself and I'm like, put up or shut up, you motherfucking chump. If you got it, now is the time to do it. And I knew I had this 55-page chunk of what I had been trying to do. So I started on page 56 and I just roared. And it was great. I was living in Venice, California, as we talk about architecture, in a Morphosis house. And I listened to music and I smoked cigarettes and I just let it fucking rip. And I remember as I was writing that book, I was like, be as bold as you can. If you don't think you should say something, say it more forcefully than you had imagined, right? No rules, no boundaries, nothing. Just fucking go. And it was a joy. It was hard. It was grueling. It was all consuming. It was some kind of fever dream. And, you know, when I think about my books, the only book of mine that I have ever read cover to cover is A Million Little Pieces, right? When I think about the books now, people ask me questions about them. As you read quotes from them, sometimes I remember writing that. Oftentimes I don't. I don't remember most of what's in the books I have written because I have never read them. But when I think about them, people are always like, what's your favorite book? I don't think about what I've written. I think always about the process of writing them. Where was I? What was happening in my life? Why did I write it? And most importantly, what did it feel like? What kind of music was I listening to? Music's a big part of my writing process. I listen to music always. I listen to music basically 24 hours a day, but especially when I'm writing.
What was the A Million Little Pieces soundtrack? Do you remember?
I do. And I use music very specifically when I write. You were talking earlier about how I try to get at a feeling. Mm-hmm. I try to make myself feel whatever that feeling is while I'm writing, which can be a manipulative process. And the way I do it most often is music. So most of A Million Little Pieces, I was listening to like 70s and 80s hard rock and punk. I was listening to like early Black Sabbath. I was listening to like non-acoustic Led Zeppelin. I was listening to the Sex Pistols and Black Flag and Minor Threat, the Vandals, and then occasionally punctuated with like super corny 80s loves tunes, like fucking Jeffrey Osborne, James Ingram, Quincy Jones, literally like On the Wings of Love type shit. Like when I was writing about me and Lily, like I remember when I was in the joint, like all you had was radio, right? And I remember when I first met her, I sought out the soft rock station in rural Minnesota. And I was just like, I'd be like, oh, fuck yeah, James Ingram, bring it to me, right? Oh. So I listen to music while I write and I manipulate myself into feeling the things that I want to write about.
Yeah.
And so I think about the books much more as sort of, you know, the process of them and how it felt when I wrote them. And I think about them as words. Like people will say A Million Little Pieces and I'll say it was one long fucking scream, right? My friend Leonard was like a hug. Bright, shiny morning was a fuck up walking down a street with his fingers up. The Final Testament's a book about pain. It's a long sob. Next to Heaven, the book I just wrote, to giggle.
It is actually.
Sort of a knowing giggle.
Yeah,
but
a wink.
The process is the most important part for me always. And I write books in super specific ways. I don't have outlines. At some point, I really start thinking about a book. And at some point, the book comes. And it just I don't know how to describe it, but it just shows up. And then I think about my job as translating it as precisely as possible.
What was the Next to Heaven music? What was the soundtrack there?
It's on my phone. It was a lot of like fun classic rock, like Van Morrison Live. A lot of party music, like some early Miley Cyrus, Party in the USA, like 2000s party music. It was a lot of 80s, like just sort of pop and rock. Like I listened a lot to the 80s and 90s channels on Sirius XM while I was writing it. It was fun music. It was laugh music. It was party music, right? It wasn't, there were a few times where maybe I switched it up a little bit, but mostly it was like, you're writing a funny, dirty, dark satire of wealth, right? It should be fun.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't use outlines. I write the book once. I'm super precise. My memories of my books are all about the process of them. The one thing I did differently with Next to Heaven than I had ever done is I normally set like pretty reasonable page quotas. When I start writing a book, from the day I start till the day I finish, I take no breaks unless hospitalization is involved, which has only happened once. I go straight from the day I start to the day I finish. I work from 8 to 16 hours a day. I used to just say if I can get 2 to 3 pages of perfect, polished writing done, that's the day. So some days it would take me 2 hours, some days it would take me 12. With Next to Heaven, I just wanted to see how fast I could write a book from the day I started to the day I finished, going fucking hard every day. So I wrote the book in 57 days. And I worked probably like 14 to 16 hours a day. When I write, it's also not like it's absolutely a solitary process. I have to be alone. I have to have control of my environment, meaning the music that's around me, what I'm seeing, and what I'm sitting in. For Next to Heaven, I sat in a custom-made Eames lounge chair, lotus position, like you see me sitting here. It's custom-made because it's bigger. It's about 50% bigger than a normal Eames chair. So it lets me sit lotus in it. And then it's covered in very expensive black mohair. So it's like very comfy. And I started and I just wanted to see how fast I could do it. And so it was these real long, hyper intense days. And I sit in the chair, but I also sometimes get up and dance by myself to the music. Sometimes it's like head banging. Sometimes it's like weird, like sometimes I pretend I'm slow dancing with the hot girl who I believe has a crush on me. It's a very weird process to describe. It's a fever dream of some kind where these words are flooding out of me. I don't even know what the fuck they are. I don't remember them. It's a very pure process of creation for me, at least. And it's why it's what I love. And it's what I think about when I think about the books. I had this weird thing a few years ago. They have this thing in Lyon, France called the International Symposium of the Novel. It's every 4 years. It's like the fucking World Cup for novelists. Each year they invite 4 people, and they have to be from different countries each time. So if there had been an American the time before me, I have to wait, right? So I did it in, I think, 2012. And while I was there in Lyon, I met with like 6 or 8 students who were writing their theses on my work. And I had 2 sessions where I had one session with all of them, and then I had individual sessions with each of them. And they would ask me questions about my book, and I'd be like, I don't have any fucking idea what you're talking about. I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what you're asking me. I don't remember writing that, and I have no idea what it means. It means whatever you want. But if they wanted to ask me, like, where was I when I wrote, I wrote half A Bright Shiny Morning in France immediately after the Oprah controversy. Then I came back and I wrote the second half of it in an apartment above where the nightclub Sway is, where Paul Sevigny currently has a nightclub. And that apartment above that nightclub was uninhabitable because it was above a fucking nightclub. So the dude who owned the building rented it to me for $250 a month for like 6 years. And I wrote the other half of it there. And I remember I was fucking pissed. I was like, these motherfuckers say my career is over. These motherfuckers say the only reason people read what I do is because of some bullshit. Well, it's time to fucking show them.
Yeah.
And I listened to a bunch of metal and a bunch of punk, a bunch of like the Rocky theme song, Eye of the Tiger, Here I Go Again by Whitesnake, right? Like Highway to Hell by AC/DC. Yeah. And I was like, motherfuckers.
Well, I mean, we skipped over that part, so I do want to just at least touch on it. We don't need to belabor the Oprah controversy. It's been played out enough. But I think a writer at The Guardian got it right when they described this moment as, quote, one of those orgies of public uproar in which everyone seemed to lose all sense of perspective and wildly overstate their case.
I remember Jon Stewart once said something. I love that he said that. Jon Stewart, when it was all happening, was like, okay, America, time for a conversation. And he was like, showed a picture of George Bush, and he goes, this guy lied and took us to war, and you love him. This guy lied while he was writing a book he calls art and made America read, and you fucking hate him. And I was like, yeah, that about sums it up, man. But I mean, people don't think about a million little, even the Oprah stuff the way I do. I think about it very differently.
It's almost 20 years since that whole thing.
So I have a therapist who probably knows me better than any person in the world. And I started seeing that therapist about a month after the Oprah book club announcement. The book was selling
good timing.
500,000 copies a week. It sold 5 million copies in 3 months.
It's in 28 different languages.
No, it's in 48 different languages.
I mean, wow. Yeah.
And I went from being a well-known and successful but anonymous writer to being famous overnight. And I couldn't walk down a street in New York. I couldn't get on a plane. I couldn't do anything. And as a writer, it's real jarring because I was used to spending almost all of my time alone and being inside of myself. So I started seeing this therapist. I was like, I hate being famous and I hate fucking being on Oprah, man. I was like, I got in this to be the world's most notorious author. And now I'm like Oprah's little addiction guy, like her little fucking show pony.
Self-help, bro.
Self-help, bro. And I was like, fuck this. I hate this. What do I, like, this isn't what I signed up for. And then when it blew up, I remember I went in to see him. And he was like, how the last couple of weeks been? Because there was the Oprah and the Larry King and then the Oprah, all this bullshit. And I sort of laughed. I was like, surreal, man. He's like, well, you got what you wanted. How does it feel? And I was like, I don't know yet. But at that moment, it shifted how I thought of it. Like, oh, this is so terrible to him saying you got what you wanted. And I was like, yeah, I did.
Hey everyone, taking another quick break here to tell you a little bit about our weekly newsletter, where I share a behind-the-scenes look into each time-sensitive episode, and where we also get into various things in the cultural sphere our team at The Slowdown is paying attention to. You could sign up and join our 13,000 plus other subscribers by going to slowdown.media/newsletter. That's slowdown.media/newsletter. And now, back to the episode. I love that at the end of 2006, New York Magazine put you on their approval matrix as highbrow despicable, which is probably right exactly where like James Frey pre the Oprah controversy wanted to be.
Where James Frey to this day wants to be, man. My game hasn't fucking changed. Like, I'm a little mellower. I'm older. I think about heavy shit. I'm a Taoist who watches the river goes by. But when I come to do what I do, right? Like, I still want to fucking bring it. Like, I save my ferocity for my work. In every other aspect of my life, I want to be peaceful and quiet and kind and private. But when I write a book, I'm bringing what I got.
I think also it's important to state here, as with any controversy or sort of moment like that, there's a before and there's an after, and there are decisions to make. And you plodded on. You were just like, screw this. I'm going to keep doing what I do, which is write books and tell stories. And I just think it's interesting that
one thing about it is it's never really been talked about fully. Like, I got hammered in the United States by the media. But if you want to look at the data, I was number one on the Times list for like 5 months before the controversy and for 12 after. So it wasn't.
No, there was a positive thing. And even for Oprah, I mean, she later apologized to you, of course. And maybe you have things to say about that. But
the only thing I have to say about that is, and I didn't apologize back. And that's it.
what to me is so important about how you weathered that, I should say, is you didn't quit. There was no quitting.
No, there was the opposite. Like, it was interesting. And this has been written about a little bit. I had a bunch of famous writer friends by that time, but they weren't like the young guys. Brett Ellis was a good friend of mine. Jay McInerney was a friend of mine. And Norman Mailer and Kurt Vonnegut and lesser Tom Wolfe were friends of mine. So I remember when the stuff first started happening, I would occasionally call Brett or McInerney for advice. I remember I called Brett after the Oprah stuff blew up. I was like, what do you do? What do I do here, man? And he was like, you know what, James? You have so wildly exceeded anything I've ever done that I have no advice for you anymore. Good luck. And I sort of laughed. And
says the guy who wrote American Psycho.
Says the guy who wrote American Psycho.
Right.
So then I was talking to Mailer about it. And Mailer was like, listen, man, it was going to happen when somebody wrote a book good enough and important enough and radical enough. It's up to you what happens from here. And one of the things I appreciated about Norman was his knowledge of history, literary and art history. But he was like, listen, everybody hated Hemingway when he was alive. Everybody hated me when I was alive. We'll see if you're good enough to stand up against it, but that's what you've got now. They will hate you for as long as you're doing it. And if you're good enough, it won't matter. And if you're not, you're done. And I took that to fucking heart, right? And when Norman Mailer is saying that to you.
Yeah, take it.
It's meaningful.
Right.
With Bright Shiny Morning, which I wrote next, after all of that controversy, the first line of that book is nothing in this book should be considered accurate or reliable. Then the book is filled with all kinds of lists and historical facts and statistics and all of this shit. And I knew that when that book was read, people were going to be like, well, is it all real? And literally, I got a fucking call at some point. I think it was from the New York Times, but I don't remember exactly. And they were like, we're finding all kinds of factual issues in Bright Shiny Morning. Like, how do you justify manipulating and making up statistics about a city? And I was like, did you read the book? And they were like, well, of course we read the book. And I was like, the first fucking line says nothing in this book should be considered accurate or reliable. If you don't understand that fucking line, I can't help you. And I was just like, what, right? But I was also setting a trap. And the trap was, if I write a book that gets published as nonfiction, they tear it apart to find out what in it is a lie. And if I write a book that's fiction, they tear it apart trying to find out what's the truth, right? Ultimately, the point that I have been trying to make for years is that these genres are irrelevant. Fiction, nonfiction, poetry. We live in a world now where we can't trust truth on the news, and we want art to be the standard bearer of it. And I'm like, fuck that. The only truth is the truth I know when it comes to art. I took a beating for it. I still take beatings for it.
Now look at the state of media and our relationship to truth.
Look at it in literature. I know I get shit for saying this stuff. So fucking be it, man. Look at literature, right?
Yeah.
People talk about, oh, James, blah, blah. Literature has not been the same since I arrived. Every memoir after me is published with a disclaimer in front of it.
Hillbilly Elegy.
You know why they publish them? Because all those motherfuckers do the same shit I do, which is they just try to write the best book. Now there's a whole new genre that's been invented, even though I think genres are stupid, called autofiction.
Yeah, the literary nonfiction, whatever that means.
Right. Like, the point was to destroy the ideas of these categories. Like, when I look at a painting, I don't have to say, well, to somebody who I'm talking to, is this a nonfiction painting or a fiction painting? Is this a poetry painting? What is this? It's just a fucking painting.
Yeah. Maybe you should call your books paintings.
I just call them books, right? People say, what do you write, nonfiction or fiction? And I say, I write fucking books.
Love it. Well, I mean, in 2009, after Bright Shiny Morning came out, you said, I find the older I get, the more radical my work becomes. Do you think that still holds true?
Yeah, in some ways. Like the most radical thing I could do is just write a Jackie Collins book.
That skewers the town you live in.
That is not just skewers the town I live in, but the people that I live amongst.
Yeah, the
right?
very wealthy. There are some lines in there that are pretty good. I mean, there's softballs like there's nothing rich people love more than cocktail hour. but then you have some other ones that are
true.
For as with most great and wealthy families, after a few generations, its descendants had grown lazy.
Yeah, they do.
Despite their advantages, rich people were rarely ever cool, though they spent huge amounts of money trying to achieve it. And cool people were rarely rich because they were lazy, and part of being cool is not giving a fuck.
Yeah, I think that's all true. I talk at another part in the book, I think about the currency of coolness at art galleries. That half the reason rich people buy art is so they can feel like they're cool like an artist. The fundamental conflict there is every artist I know looks at hedge fund billionaires and they're like, wow, why didn't I do what that dude does, right? How rich is that guy? What guy's got it on easy street. And every hedge fund billionaire I know looks at an artist and is like, why the fuck did I devote my whole life to sitting in a bank office staring at a Bloomberg screen? And they're each trying to get something from...
But I feel like sometimes you find someone who's in between. Not quite hybrid. Like I would say like Rashid Johnson is an artist who has, kind of, he lives in the Hamptons a bunch, but I've
known Rashid
has a show at Guggenheim. He's incredibly successful. He's not, billionaire, but he's... No, there is now a separate class of artists. Rashid is definitely among them, sort of Koons, Richard Prince, Rashid, Amy Sherald, plenty of artists who now not only sell their art to the 0.1%, but live amongst them and have almost the same resources as they do. I think that's great. I've known Rashid for a long, long time. Yeah, he's been a guest on the show.
He's a lovely, kind, good-hearted, sober man who deserves every success he has seen. And so, yeah, Rashid sort of straddles those worlds in the same way I do.
Yeah.
And good on Rashid. He makes great art. Like I said, he deserves all the success. The show at the Guggenheim's like breathtaking.
Made a film actually that really explores this dynamic of the rich and the haves and the have-nots.
He did. Yeah. I've tried to convince him to go make another movie with me.
Rashid, if you're listening, make another movie.
Rashid, let's go. We've talked about it a bunch. Let's go do it. I'm a big fan.
You dropped an Easter egg earlier, which is that you said you were hospitalized while writing a book. I want to hear that story, if you can share it, if you're open to it.
So I used to have this company called Full Fathom 5, which was like basically what I did was I took the ancient idea of an artist studio or the contemporary one. You could say
the Damien Hirst model,
the Warhol model, the Hirst model, the Murakami model, the Koons model, everybody uses that model now. And I applied it to the creation of storytelling, right? So I would come up with ideas for books, movies, TV shows, video games, and I had a staff of people who would create the material necessary to try to get those things made. That company published 250 books over 7 years with 41 New York Times bestsellers.
Made a movie, right?
We made a few movies. We made a few TV shows. We made a bunch of video games. It was fun, but I sold it to a French billionaire who I worked for 5 years. It was a fun job, but I used to fly back and forth between New York and LA every other week. And 1 week out of every 12, I was in Paris. I was writing Katerina while I was doing that. And I got food poisoning twice in 1 week in Paris from the same thing, which was stupid of me. In France,
you don't have a trip to Paris without some good food poisoning, really.
Well, in France, they
Café Fleur food poisoned me, for the record.
Café Fleur, I've never had food poisoning there. I've had food poisoning in a lot of places. I've had it across the street at Brasserie Lip. My favorite thing to eat in France, they're called bouleaux, and bouleaux are giant sea snails. They're delicious. Americans hate them. I love them. They steam them. You scoop them out of the shell. You dip them in mayonnaise.
I love a good snail.
I got food poisoning twice from bouleaux in a week, and it was the middle of summer, and I was flying home, and I fell down while I was walking to the bathroom on the plane. I have pictures on my phone, and hit my head just from exhaustion and from food poisoning twice in 5 days. And I woke up on the plane. I was covered in blood, and the attendants all thought I was on drugs. And I was like, no, I've just been sick. And there was a doctor on the plane, patched up my head. I got off the plane. They put me in an ambulance, took me to the hospital. I was there for like 3 days for clinical exhaustion, which I didn't know was a real. I always smirked when I read people were in the hospital for that. My heart rate dropped. My blood pressure dropped. And then I had to wear, my kids thought it was delightful, a big orange wristband that said fall risk for 2 weeks. But that's when I got sick in the middle of writing a book, hospitalized in the middle of writing a book.
Wow. It's kind of eerie because it actually, the opening scene of A Million Little Pieces, you're on a plane and you're waking up and you're like super disoriented.
That happened too. People are like, how did that happen? And I'm like, in fucking 1992, there was no security at airports, right? You walk through a fucking metal detector, got on the plane. You could buy a ticket 2 minutes before the thing took off. And my buddy carried me through and security with the doctor's letter and put me on that plane. I don't like to fly much anymore. I have a girlfriend now who loves to travel, and I'm always like, I traveled too much in my fucking life. I just want to sit in my yard.
Very Tao of you.
Watch the river go by,
yeah.
literally.
Well, I want to end on a down note. This is quoting from your new book. Maybe some of this definitely comes out of this, but when I was reading this paragraph, I was like, this is channeled from James Frey, but it reads a bit like it could be Tao. So I wanted to leave this with you and the listeners. No beauty exists without flaws, however hidden. Absolute safety is but an illusion. No matter what we think or see or believe or feel, perfection isn't real. And beneath the beauty and safety and perfection of New Bethlehem, there are secrets and there are lies, and there is sadness and there is rage, there is failure and there is desperation, betrayal and heartbreak, hate and violence. This is the beginning of the book. It sort of tees it up.
I remember this.
But I think people will now want to go read your book after.
I hope so. I mean, that's kind of what the book's about, is that I live in the town I live in, I think from 1880 to 2014 was consistently the wealthiest town in the United States. And now it's like one of the top 5 as certain Silicon Valley towns have overtaken it. But it's a description of where I live. This beautiful place with the most beautiful homes, the most high achieving, most successful, wealthiest people, the best school system, the best sports, the most beautiful parks, and the most of them. The safest place, literally in the country. And beneath it, there is all of those things. There is humanity beneath the veneer of beauty and wealth and perfection. There is what we started with, which is humanity. Yeah. There is love and hate and secrets and violence and rage and terror and revenge. And that's what I wrote about.
Let's end there. Thanks, James.
Thank you, man. This was like one of the best conversations I've ever had, I think, about what I do. And I deeply, deeply appreciate all the reading and research. As a guest, it's very humbling to know you spent so much time and awesome. So I thank you so much for having me. Anytime you want me to come back, I'd love to come back.
Appreciate it.
And aside from being a host, I love you as just as a human.
Thank you.
And if I'm allowed to say this, you married a wonderful woman.
Appreciate it, James. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Extra thanks to our Season 11 presenting sponsor, the high jewelry Maison Van Cleef & Arpels. Since its founding in Paris's Place Vendôme in 1906, Van Cleef & Arpels has developed a distinctive blend of poetry and refinement. With its jewelry and watchmaking collections, the Maison is an invitation to a timeless universe of beauty and harmony. You can discover more at vancleefarpels.com. That's VANCLEEF arpels.com. And thank you for listening. You can find more episodes of Time Sensitive on our website, timesensitive.fm, or wherever you listen to podcasts. To keep up with our latest time-sensitive episodes and get behind-the-scenes updates, sign up for our newsletter at slowdown.media/newsletter. That's slowdown.media/newsletter. You can follow us on Instagram at slowdown.media. Our theme music was composed by Billy Martin. This episode was produced by Ramon Broza, Mimi Hannon, Emily McDonald, Kylie McConville, and Johnny Simon.